TypeScript is a strongly typed superset of JavaScript that compiles to plain JavaScript. Now you can use this language for application-scale JavaScript development. Also, it can be executed on any browser, any host, and any operating system. Hi everyone, welcome to this TypeScript tutorial where we will get into the depth of TypeScript and understand the different basics. Now before we begin the session, let's have a look at today's agenda. So first we will have a brief introduction to TypeScript, its features and benefits. Then we will move on and have a look at the different types of TypeScript. Then we will discuss some of the basics and fundamentals such as variables, operators, loops, functions, strings, arrays, interfaces, classes, and objects. And finally, we will take a use case and see how TypeScript actually works. Now, before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to Edureka's YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to never miss an update from us on trending technologies. Also, if you are looking for an online training certification in web development, check out the link in the description box below. So let's get started. So what is TypeScript actually? It is a typed superset of JavaScript that compiles to plain JavaScript. TypeScript is pure object-oriented with classes, interfaces, and statically typed programming languages like C# or Java. It requires a compiler to compile and generate in JavaScript files. Basically, TypeScript is the ES6 version of JavaScript with some additional features. Now, a TypeScript code is written in a file with .ts extension and then compiled into JavaScript using the compiler. You can write the file in any code editor and the compiler needs to be installed on your platform. After the installation, the command tsc and the file name .ts compiles the TypeScript code into a plain JavaScript file. So let's take an example and see how it works. Now here is a simple example of the Hello World code in TypeScript. So all you have to do is take the variable and here you also pass your data type and then pass the string and then console your message. Now I have saved this as hello world.ts. For a TypeScript file, the extension is always .ts. Now the next thing that you need to do is go to the terminal. Now here you can just run this code using tsc, then your file name which is hello world.ts. So this will basically create your JavaScript file. Now in order to open the JavaScript file, you can just type node hello world.js. Now you can see that you have got the output as hello world. This is one way of viewing the result in the terminal. Apart from that, what you can do is you can also have an HTML file here and inside this you will have your hello world.js. So I will also show you that the JS file has been generated here. So let's open the file. So here you can see that you have the hello world.js file as well. So this is my JavaScript file and this is my TypeScript file. So you can see the difference. Here we have the variable name and then after colon we also have the data type here. But in JavaScript we do not have the data type. Now if I go to my HTML file and I source my JavaScript file here and then I save this. And now when I run this HTML file, you can see that we go to this page and when we go to inspect and go to the console, the output is same as hello world. So these are two different ways you can either get the output in your terminal or you can see it with the help of an HTML file and open it in a console as well. So this is a simple example of how TypeScript actually works. Now let's talk about some of the features of TypeScript. Now the first feature is cross-platform. So the TypeScript compiler can be installed on any operating system such as Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Also, it is an object-oriented language. So TypeScript provides features like classes, interfaces, and modules. Thus, it can write object-oriented code for client-side as well as server-side development. Next up is the static type checking. Now TypeScript uses static typing and helps type checking at compile time. Thus, you can find errors while writing the code without even running the script. Next is the optional static typing. So TypeScript also allows optional static typing in case you are using the dynamic typing of JavaScript. Apart from that, you have the DOM manipulation. So you can use TypeScript to manipulate the DOM for adding or removing elements. Finally, the ES6 feature, which is the TypeScript includes most features of the planned ECMA script 2015, such as class, interface, arrow functions, etc. Now, these were some of the features of TypeScript. Let's talk about some of the advantages of using TypeScript. Now, TypeScript is fast, simple, easy to learn, and runs on any browser or JavaScript engine. It is also similar to JavaScript and uses the same syntax and semantics. Not just that, this helps backend developers write front-end code faster. Apart from that, the TypeScript code can be called from an existing JavaScript code. Also, it works with existing JavaScript frameworks and libraries without any issues. The definition file, that is with the .d.ts extension, provides support for existing JavaScript libraries like jQuery, d3.js, etc. So TypeScript code can add JavaScript libraries using type definitions to avail the benefits of type checking, code auto-completion, and documentation in existing dynamically typed JavaScript libraries. And finally, it includes features from ES6 and ES7 that can run in ES5 level JavaScript engines like Node.js. So this was all about what is TypeScript and also what are the different features and advantages. Now let's move on and talk about the different types of TypeScript. So the type system represents the different types of values supported by the language. It checks the validity of the supplied values before they are stored or manipulated by the program. Now it can be classified into two types, such as the built-in and the user-defined. Now the built-in includes numbers, string, boolean, void, null, and undefined, whereas the user-defined includes enumerations, classes, interfaces, arrays, and tuple. So these were the two different types of TypeScript. Now let's move on and talk about some of the fundamentals of TypeScript. So let's begin with variables. Now a variable is a named space in the memory which is used to store values. The type syntax for declaring a variable in TypeScript includes a colon after the variable name followed by its type. Similar to JavaScript, we use the var keyword to declare a variable. Now there are four different options to declare a variable. So the first one is you take the var keyword and then take the identifier, colon, the type annotation, and then provide the value. The second one is just taking the var keyword, the identifier, colon, the type annotation without the value. The third one is taking the var keyword along with the identifier and provide the value. And the final option is to just declare your identifier with the help of your var keyword. Now let's take another example for variables. So here you can see that I have taken the var keyword and then I have taken the identifier, that is the name, and after colon I have given the data type as well, which is string, because I'm passing a name here which is a string type. Then I have given the employee ID and the data type here is the number and the value is here, which is 1001. Now this is my TypeScript file. As soon as I compile this one, I get this particular JavaScript file where I do not have the data types mentioned here. Now here I have created this HTML file. So let me source this particular file here, which is example1.js. So now let me save this. Now when we run this file, that is our HTML file, and go to the console, so you can see that the output here is name Daisy and employee ID as 1001. So what happens here is that first we take the TypeScript file and then we compile it and then we get the JavaScript, that is we convert it into the JavaScript code. And then when we run this JavaScript code, we get the output as the name and the employee ID, which is Daisy and 1001. So this is how you can define your variables in TypeScript. Now let's move on and talk about operators. So an operator is used to define functions that will be performed on the data. The data on which operators work are called operands. Now there are different types of operators in TypeScript, like the arithmetic operators, logical operators, relational operators, bitwise, and assignment operators. So first let's talk about the arithmetic operators. Now talking about the arithmetic operators, we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, increment, and decrement. Now the addition operator returns the sum of the operands, whereas the subtraction operator returns the difference of the values. Similarly, the multiplication operator returns the product of the values, and the division performs division operation and returns the quotient. Then we have the modulus operator, which performs division operation and returns the remainder. Next up is the increment operator, which increments the value of the variable by 1. And finally, we have the decrement operator, which decrements the value of the variable by 1. So here is an example for operators. So you can see that this is my TypeScript file. So I have taken the variable num1 and the first number is 10. Then I've taken num2 where the second number is 2. And then I've given the result value to be 0 because this will take the value of these two numbers and whatever operation I perform. So the initial value of the result is 0. Now for the operators, the first operator is addition. So I've taken num1 and num2 and added both of these numbers. Then I have used the subtraction here. So this will give the difference between these two numbers. And finally, the product of both my numbers here. Now this is my TypeScript file. So all I have to do is go to the terminal, open the new terminal. Now here, this is a different way of running your code. So all you can do is just type tsc example1.ts. So basically here we are compiling our TypeScript file and then it will generate our JavaScript file. So now when I run this code, so here we are compiling our TypeScript. Now compilation is completed. So all we can do is look for our JavaScript file. So for that, I will write node example1.js. So now here you can see that I have got my output as sum equals to 12, difference is 8, and the product is 20. Which means that it has taken the value of 10 and 2, 10 plus 2 equals to 12, and then 10 minus 2 is 8, and then finally the product of these two, that is 10 into 2 equals to 20. So this is basically how you compile your TypeScript into a JavaScript file and then get the output. So this was the arithmetic operators. Now talking about logical operators, we have three different operators, that is the AND, OR, and NOT. Now the AND logical operator returns true only if all the expressions specified returns true, whereas for the OR operator, this returns true if at least one of the expressions specified return true. And finally, we have the NOT operator. Now it returns the inverse of the expression's result. Now let's take another example for our logical operators. So here is the example for the logical operators. So you can see that I have taken an average and a percentage number, which is 20 and 90. Now here I want the output to be the value of average and then the value of percentage. Now for the result, I have passed the data type to be Boolean, which means it will check the condition if it's true or false and then give you the output. So here the condition that I have provided is average greater than 50 and percentage should be greater than 80. But you can see that for my average, the value is 20, which is less than 50. But the percentage is greater than 80 because the value here is 90. But the condition for an AND operator to be true is that both the conditions needs to be true. So now let's save this and then let's go to the terminal and let's run this code here. Similarly, we will just write tsc example1.ts and we'll run this. So now that this TypeScript file has been compiled, we will look for our JavaScript file. So we will write node example1.js. So you can see that the result is false here because the value of average is 20, the value of our percentage is 90, but the condition is average greater than 50 and percentage greater than 80. Although one condition is true here, but for AND operator, both the conditions need to be true. So the answer is false here. Now the next operator is the relational operators. So the first one is the greater than operator, then we have lesser than, then greater than or equal to, then lesser than or equal to, then equality, which is double equal, then not equal. Now these are all relational operators. These are actually in order to compare different values if they're greater than, equal to, or not equal to each other. So now let's take another example, and here we have taken another two different numbers, that is 10 and 7, and then we will take the result as num1 greater than num2. So the first result that we want to check is whether the number 1 is greater than the number 2 that we have initialized. Second operator that we have used here is the lesser than operator. So here we are checking whether our number 1 is less than number 2 or not. So now let me save this and then go to the terminal and we write tsc example1.ts. So here we are compiling the TypeScript code into our JavaScript code, and then again same thing, node example1.js. So now you can see that first we print the value of both the numbers. So we have value of num1 as 10, value of num2 as 7. Then we have num1 greater than num2, which is what we are checking for. The answer is true here because our first number is 10 and the second number is 7, which means that num1 is greater than num2. The second condition is definitely false because num1 is greater than num2 and not lesser than. So this is how the relational operator works. Now let's talk about the bitwise operators. So in bitwise operators, we have a bitwise AND, bitwise OR, bitwise XOR, bitwise NOT. Then we have the left shift, and right shift with 0. Now this bitwise AND operator performs a Boolean AND operation on each bit of its integer arguments, whereas the bitwise OR operator performs a Boolean OR operation on each bit of its integer arguments. Then we have the bitwise XOR. Now it performs a Boolean exclusive OR operation on each bit of its integer arguments. Then the bitwise NOT, which is a unary operator and operates by reversing all the bits in the operand. The next operator is the left shift. Now this moves all the bits in its first operand to the left by the number of places specified in the second operand. Next up is the right shift. The left operand's value is moved right by the number of its bits specified by the right operand. And finally we have the right shift with 0. Now it is similar to the right shift operator except that the bits shifted in on the left are always 0. Now let's take an example for our bitwise operators. So here we have taken a number as 2 whose bit presentation is 10 and the number 3 whose bit presentation is 11. So here we have taken the result A and B, which is our bitwise AND operator. Then we have taken the bitwise OR operator. So now let's save this, go to the terminal and then run this particular code, that is tsc example1.ts, and let it compile, and then we will open our JavaScript file, which is nodeexample1.js. So you can see that in the first part what we have done is we have taken the bit presentation of both these values and we have taken the AND value of A and B, and the result is 2 here, whereas when we take the OR value the result is 3 here. It does not show the bit presentation because we have also assigned the values as integers and not in bits. So this was about the bitwise operators. Finally we have the assignment operators. Now in assignment operators, we have simple assignment, add an assignment, subtract an assignment, multiply an assignment, divide and assignment. Now the simple assignment assigns values from the right side operand to the left side operand, whereas the add an assignment adds the right operand to the left operand and assigns the result to the left operand. Then we have the subtract an assignment, which subtracts the right operand from the left operand and assigns the result to the left operand. Next is the multiply and assignment, which multiplies the right operand with the left operand and assigns the result to the left one. Then finally we have the divide and assignment, which divides the left operand with the right one and assigns the result to the left operand. So now let's have a look at the assignment operator example. So here we have taken a variable a, assigned the value as 12, then taken the next variable as b and assigned the value as 10. Now for using the assignment operators, the first one we have taken is the simple assignment. So where we are assigning the value of a equals to b, means we are equalizing both the values. Next assignment is a plus equal to b, which means this is the additional and assignment. So here what will happen is a will get the value as a plus b. Similarly, in the third one, we have taken the subtraction and assignment operator where a's value will change to a minus b. So now let's save this and similarly run it in the terminal. And then finally run our JavaScript file here. So you can see that in the first one, what happened is that the right hand side value has been assigned to the left hand operator. So here a equals to b and the value changes to 10 because b's value has been assigned to a. Similarly, for a plus equal to b, we have got the value to be 20. So here we have taken the value of a, which has now changed to 10, and then we have the value for b, which is 10. So 10 plus 10, which is 20, has been assigned to a now. In the next step, the value of a is already 20 now. So what we will do is we will take 20 and then subtract it from b, which is 10. So 20 minus 10 is 10. This is how these assignment operators work. So these were the different operators. Now let's talk about the loops in TypeScript. Now talking about loops, there may be situations when a block of code needs to be executed several numbers of times. A loop statement allows us to execute a statement or group of statements multiple times. Now the TypeScript loops can be classified as definite and indefinite. Now for definite we have the for loops, and for indefinite we have the while and do while loops. Now talking about the for loop, let's have a look at the syntax. So first we use the keyword as for, then inside this we pass parameters, and the first one is the first expression. Then we have the second expression, and finally third expression. Now after this, what you will do is you will just write all the statements that are to be executed repeatedly. So I'll just write statements to be executed repeatedly. So this is our syntax for the for loop. Now let's take an example and see how it works. So inside this, I will just take let I equals to 0. So I'll initialize the value as 0, and then let's take the value to be less than 2, and then let's increment this, so I++. Then we'll just use console.log, and we will execute the block statement. So here we will execute block statement, which is basically our I value. So now let's save this and run it in the terminal. So we have our tsc example 1.ts, and here we will look for our JavaScript file, which is the example 1.js. So you can see that both the statements have been executed 2 times because the I value should be less than 2. So here I've made a mistake. I've missed the S here. So let's correct this and write it as statement and save this and then run it again while it's compiling, and then we take the JS file again. So now you can see that execute block statement 0, execute block statement 1, which is our I value, because we have given the condition to be I less than 2. So the initial value is 0 and then the next value is 1. So we're executing the statement 2 times because we have 0 and 1. Now if you give this I value to be less than 5, it will execute the statement 5 times. So let me just change this value to 5, and now let me save this, and now let's run this again. So when we are compiling this TypeScript file and then we will just look for our JavaScript file here. So let me copy and paste it here. So now you can see that the statement has been executed 5 times. So it starts from 0. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is how you can execute multiple statements and just with the help of your for loop. So you don't have to write these statements 5 times. You can just use the loop here and execute the same thing the number of times you want to. Next we have the while loop. So let's have a look at the while loop syntax. Now the while loop executes the instructions each time the condition specified evaluates to true. So the syntax here is we have the while keyword. Inside this we will just pass the parameter as condition expression. And after this we will just write the code block that is to be executed. So this is the syntax for our while loop. Now let's see how this while loop works. So let's take an example. So let me take a variable I and pass the data type as number and assign the value as 1. Then let's start with our while loop. So here I have the condition and I'm writing while I less than 3. We will just give the console.log and then we will write statement execution and the I value. So the number of times it will be executed, it will take the I value here. And then we will just increment the value here. So this is our while loop in TypeScript. Now let's save this. Go back to the terminal and then just run this again. So here I have got this error because I have missed the bracket here, which is the curly braces here. So let me just add the bracket here. Now let's save this again. And now we will run this code again. So now you can see that we do not have any more errors here. Now when we execute this, we have 2 statements, that is statement execution 1, statement execution 2. So here you can see that the value does not start from 0 because we have initialized the I value as 1 and not as 0. Now similarly, if I change the value to 5, that is I less than 5, and let's see how many times it will be executed here. So let's take this file and compile it again. And then we go for our JavaScript file here. So you can see that the statement has been executed 4 times and it starts from 1 and not 0 here because we have initialized the value to be 1 for I. So we have the statement as 1, 2, 3, 4. So it has been executed 4 times. So this was our while loop. Now the next loop that we have is the do while loop. Now the do while loop is similar to the while loop except that it does not evaluate the condition for the first time the loop executes. So let's see the syntax first. So for the do while loop, first we take the do keyword. After that we add the code block that is to be executed. And then we have our while condition here. So we just take the while keyword and write the condition inside. That is our condition expression. So this is the syntax for our do while code. Now let's take the example and see how it works. So first I'm taking the let keyword, let I number equals to 1. So I'm initializing the value of I to be 1. Then I have my do keyword and then we move on to console.log and we print the block statement, which will take the I value here. Now the next thing we need to do is increment the I value or decrement, whatever you're trying to do. Now once you're out of this do loop, we are taking the while condition here and I'm giving the value as I less than 3. Now let's save this and go to the terminal. Now here we will run this TypeScript code, or we will compile this and convert it into the JavaScript. So once this is done, we will look for our JavaScript code, which is nodeexample1.js. So here you can see that the statement has been executed 2 times because I've given the I value should be less than 3 and I've also initialized the value for I as 1. So it did not start from 0, it started from 1 and 2, and it printed two different statements here. Now, apart from these, there are break and continue statements in TypeScript that are used in a loop. So talking about the break statement, it is used to take control out of a construct, and using the break statement in a loop helps the program in exiting the loop. So here you can see a structure of how break statement works. So it has a conditional code block, then the condition, and there's a break statement here. So this break statement will help you exiting the loop of the program. So here is an example of the break statement. So we have taken the variable I and given the value as 1. Then the while condition is if I is less than equals to 10, then we have an if condition which says I modulus 5 equals 0. So here we are basically trying to print the first multiple of 5 between 1 and 10. Now here we will break. Now as soon as we find the first multiple, we will exit the loop. Then here we have the I++ where we keep on incrementing the value, and then we will give all the outputs and exit the loop. So now let's save this and then run it in the terminal and see what output we get here. So we have the example1.ts file here to compile, and then we have the node example1.js. So you can see that the first multiple of 5 between 1 and 10 is 5. So basically, as soon as it found the first multiple, it came out of the loop and then incremented the values and looked for more. So here you will get the output to be 5. Now, apart from the break statement, we also have a continue statement. Now, the continue statement skips the subsequent statements in the current iteration and takes the control back to the beginning of the loop. So here is an example for the continue statement. So we have the variable number as 0, variable count as 0. Then we have given the for loop where we have initialized the value as 0. Then the condition as less than equals to 10. And then we have incremented our num value, that is num++. Now the next condition that we are looking for is num modulus 2 equals 0, which means that the value must be an even number. So now if this condition is met, we continue. And then we keep counting, that is count ++. Now what we are trying to print here is the count of odd values between 0 and 10. So as long as this condition is met, we are continuing. Wherever this condition is not met, we are increasing the count here. So let's save this. So here I'm checking the numbers between 0 and 10. So let's go to the terminal and run this code. So you can see that the output that we have got here is the count of odd values between 0 and 10 is 5. So basically all the odd values, which is 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9. So there are total 5 values that are odd between 0 and 10. So these were the different types of loops in TypeScript. Now let's move ahead and talk about the different functions in TypeScript. Now in JavaScript, functions are one of the most important part as it is a functional programming language. So functions ensure that the program is maintainable and reusable and organized into readable blocks. While TypeScript provides the concept of classes and modules, functions still are an integral part of the language. Now first we have the named functions. Now a named function is used to declare and call a function by its given name. So this is the example for your named function. So basically this will just give you the output as TypeScript function. So let us save this one. Go to the terminal. So here you're getting the output as TypeScript function. So this is just a simple way of declaring and calling a function by its given name. So what we have done is we have just taken the function here, given the string as TypeScript function, and we are calling this particular function here as display. Now this is the name of a function and we have just called it here. Thus we get the output as TypeScript function. Now next is the anonymous function. An anonymous function is one which is defined as an expression. Now this expression is stored in a variable. So these functions are invoked using the variable name that the function is stored in. So this is the example for the anonymous function. So here we have a variable as let greeting equals to function. So here we have this anonymous function. Now we are taking the output as TypeScript function, and then we are calling this particular function with the help of the variable name that we have assigned here, that is greeting. So we are taking this particular variable and calling it in the form of a function. So here we will get the output as TypeScript function. Next we have the arrow function. Now fat arrow notations are used for anonymous functions, that is for function expressions. They are also called lambda functions in other languages. So here is an example for our arrow function. Now using the fat arrow drops the need to use the function keyword. Parameters are passed in the angular brackets and the function expression is enclosed within the curly brackets here. So here when we run this code, we should get the value as 10 plus 30, that is, it should give us the value to be 40 here. So this was the arrow function. Then we have the function overloading. Now TypeScript provides the concept of function overloading. Thus you can have multiple functions with the same name but different parameter types and return type. So here is an example for function overloading in TypeScript. So in this example, we have the same function, that is add function, with two function declarations and one function implementation. Now the first signature has two parameters of type string, whereas the second signature has two parameters of the type number. So this is how you actually use the function overloading in your TypeScript. So this particular function will return hello Edureka, whereas this will just add these two numbers and return the value as 20. Now these were the different types of functions. Now let's talk about the strings in TypeScript. Now talking about strings, the string is another primitive data type that is used to store text data. String values are surrounded by single quotation marks or double quotation marks. So let's have a look at the syntax of string. So we have the var keyword, then we have the var name, and here we take the new keyword and pass the string. Now inside this string keyword, you can just write the string that you want to pass here. So this is basically the value of your string or the string that you're writing here. Now there are different properties of methods available in string object, such as we have the constructor, length, and prototype. Now the constructor returns a reference to the string function that created the object. Length returns the length of the string, and the prototype property allows you to add properties and methods to an object. Now let's take an example here. So we have taken the let keyword, or you can take the var keyword. Then we take the variable name as name. Then we pass our string with the new keyword new string, and let me just write welcome to Edureka. So this is our string here. Now we will take the output in console.log. So inside this we have a message which will take the value of the string that is stored in the variable name. Now this is about taking the output of the string that you have given. Let's also find out the length. So for that we have the length property. So here we will just take length, and then we will take the length property which will be name.length. So now let's save this. Go to the terminal. So this is the example for string where we have passed the string value as welcome to Edureka, and then we have taken the output to be message and length. Now for the message it will print welcome to Edureka, and for the length it will pass the entire length of my string. So here I've written welcome to Edureka, and the length of this particular string is 19 including the spaces. So the two outputs that I'll get is first welcome to Edureka, and then next output will be the length, which is 19. Now this is about the string. Let's talk about the different string methods. Now here is a list of methods in string object. So first we have the char at. It returns the character at the specified index, then the char code at, which returns a number indicating the Unicode value of the character at the given index. Then we have the concat method, which combines the text of two strings and returns a new string. Next is the index of. Now this returns the index within the calling string object of the first occurrence of the specified value. Then we have the last index of, which returns the index within the calling string object of the last occurrence of the specified value. Then the match method, which is used to match a regular expression against a string. Then the local compare, which returns a number indicating whether a reference string comes before or after, or is the same as the given string in sort order. Then we have the search, which executes the search for a match between a regular expression and a specified string. Then comes the replace, which is used to find a match between a regular expression and a string and to replace the matched substring with a new substring. Then comes the slice, which extracts a section of a string and returns a new string. Then the split function, which splits a string object into an array of strings by separating the string into substrings. Then comes the substr, which returns the characters in a string beginning at the specified location through the specified number of characters. Then we have the substring to local lowercase uppercase, then to lowercase to uppercase to string and value of. Now these are the different string methods that we usually use while using string in our TypeScript programs. Now let's take an example for the string methods. So this is an example where we have taken the string as welcome to Edureka. Then we have used various of these methods, that is the char at 0, char at 2. So what is the character at the 0th position? That is W. So this will return the value as W. Then we have the character at 2. So it starts from 0. So we have 0, 1, 2. So the character at the position 2 is L. So it will return L. Now next we have the string 1 and string 2, and we have divided into two different strings. So first one is welcome and then Edureka. Now we are concatenating these two strings. So the concatenation function is basically joining these two strings. So it will return welcome Edureka, but it will not give any space here because we are concatenating these two strings together. In the next one, when we add an extra space and then concatenate string 1 to string 2, we get the string as welcome space Edureka. In the third one, I'm concatenating a different value and not the string 2. So here I'm giving space, then I'm writing the string to be 2. So it will return welcome 2. So this is, we are concatenating string 1 to another string which is 2. So these were the different string methods. Now let's talk about the arrays in TypeScript. Now an array is a special type of data type that stores multiple values of different data types sequentially using a special syntax. Now array elements are identified by a unique integer called the subscript or the index of the element. So now talking about arrays in TypeScript, let's have a look at the syntax of arrays. So we have the var keyword, then we take the array name here, and then we will pass the data type with a colon before that. So this is basically the declaration of my array. Now next thing we need to do is initialize. So for that, I will take the array name and then I will pass all the values inside this. So we have value 1, then value 2. Like this, we can take as many number of values as we want to. So this is basically the initialization of my array here. Now this is how you write an array in TypeScript, but there are different methods as well. So here's a list of different array methods that can be used for different purposes. So we have the filter method, which creates a new array with all of the elements of this array, for which the provided filtering function returns true. Then we have every, which returns true if every element in this array satisfies the provided testing function. Then we have the concat method, which returns a new array comprised of this array joined with other arrays. Then the index of, which returns the first or least index of an element within the array. And then the for each, which calls a function for each element in the array. Then we have the join method, which joins all elements of an array into a string. Then the last index of, which returns the last or greatest index of an element within the array. Then we also have the map function, which creates a new array with the results of calling a provided function on every element in this array. The push adds one or more elements to the end of an array. And then we have the pop, which removes the last element from an array. Then we have reduce, which applies a function simultaneously against two values of the array from left to right as to reduce it to a single value. Then we have reduce right, which applies a function simultaneously against two values of the array from right to left as to reduce it to a single value. Then we also have the reverse, shift, slice, sum methods. Then there's the sort method, which sorts the elements of an array, the toString method, the splice method, and finally the unshift method. Now let's take an example and understand these different methods here. So first we have the variable name, and then we have taken the array as string. So we have three different values here, John, Daisy, and Tara. Now we want to sort this array. So it will sort my array in the alphabetical order here. So when I take the output, it will give me the output as Daisy, John, and Tara because it has taken the alphabetical order from my string. Now the next method I've used here is the pop method. So what will happen is that it will take the last value from my array and give the output. So here the last value is Tara. So the output will be Tara because it has been popped out of my array. The next method is the push method. So I'm pushing the value as Rachel. So now it will be pushed at the end of my array. So now that I've removed Tara already, the output will show as John, Daisy, and Rachel because it's getting inserted in the end of my array, and also the third value has been removed before itself. So this was all about the array and array methods in TypeScript. Now let's move on and learn about interfaces in TypeScript. Now here is an example for the interface in TypeScript, but what is it actually? It is actually a structure that defines the contract in your application. So it defines the syntax for the classes to follow, and it contains only the declaration of the members. And it is the responsibility of the deriving class to define the members. So now here is an example, and here you can see that the employee interface includes two properties, that is the employee ID and employee name, which is written as EMP-ID and EMP-name. Now it also includes a method declaration, which is the getSalary using an arrow function, which includes one number parameter and a number return type. Now the getManagerName method is declared using a normal function here. Now this is also an arrow function here because we have used this fat arrow. So this is how you write an interface in TypeScript, or how you define an interface here. Now let's move on and talk about the TypeScript classes. So TypeScript introduced classes so that they can avail the benefits of object-oriented techniques like encapsulation and abstraction. The class in TypeScript is compiled to plain JavaScript functions by the TypeScript compiler to work across platforms and browsers. Now a class includes a constructor, properties, and methods. So here is an example of our class in TypeScript. So here we have the class name as employee. Then we have passed different properties for this particular class. So we have the employee ID, which is a number, then the employee name, which is a string, and then we are passing the constructors here. So for our ID, we have the number, and for our name, we have the data type as string. Now with the help of this keyword, we are assigning the employee name as name and employee ID as the ID that we have passed inside this constructor. Now here we are also using the method that is the getSalary method, where we have passed the data type as number and we are returning the value to be 40,000. So this is a basic example of how you define a class in TypeScript. Now talking about the class, TypeScript supports inheritance, as it is the ability of a program to create new classes from an existing class. So the class that is extended to create newer classes is called the parent class or the superclass. And the newly created classes are called the child or subclasses. So a class inherits from another class using the extends keyword, and the child classes inherit all properties and methods except the private members and constructors from the parent class. But TypeScript does not support multiple inheritance. So here is an example of inheritance in TypeScript. So the first class, which is our main class, is the person, which is basically the parent class here. So we have it as person. So you're passing the name whose data type is string. Then we have defined another class as the employee, which extends person. So basically, this is the child class, which is taking the value from the parent class, which is the person. Now inside employee, we have the employee ID. And in the constructor, we have the employee ID and name, because it's taking the name from the parent class, which is the class person. So this is an example of inheritance where we are taking both the values, that is, we are taking the output as the name and the ID from two different classes, and the child class is extracting the values from its parent class. So this was all about classes in TypeScript. Now let's talk about objects in TypeScript. So here is an example of objects in TypeScript. Now an object is basically an instance that contains a different set of key value pairs. The values can be scalar values or functions or even an array of other objects. An object can contain scalar functions and structures like arrays and tuples as well. Now here is an example which shows that we have this variable as person, and we have defined a person, and then we have given different properties to this particular person. So the person here is an object, and we have different properties of our object. So for the object person, we have the first name as Danny, then the last name as Green. Now in this part, we access the object values. So we take our object name, which is person, then we take the values or the properties of our object, that is first name, and then the last name. So this will give the output as Danny Green. So with this, we have covered almost all the important elements of TypeScript. So I hope you have understood how variables, operators, classes, objects, strings, arrays, all of these are used in TypeScript, and how we compile the code into JavaScript. Now let's take a use case and understand how TypeScript actually works. So here we will learn how to convert an existing JavaScript project to TypeScript. So when we compile a TypeScript file, it produces the corresponding JavaScript file with the same name. So here we need to ensure that our original JavaScript file, which acts as input, cannot be in the same directory so that TypeScript does not override them. Now the process to migrate from JavaScript to TypeScript includes different steps. The first one is to add tsconfig.json file to project. Now you need to add a tsconfig.json file to the project, and TypeScript uses a config.json file for managing the compilation options of the project, such as which files you want to include and which file you want to exclude. The next step is to integrate with a build tool. So most JavaScript projects have an integrated build tool like Gulp or Webpack. Now you can integrate projects with the Webpack. So there are different ways to do this. The first one is to run the command on terminal, which is the npm install awesome TypeScript loader source map loader. So this is the command that you need to run on terminal. Also in Webpack integration, you use the awesome TypeScript loader combined with source map loader for easier debugging of source code. The second method is you can merge the module config property in our webpack.config.js file to include the loaders. The next step is to move all .js files to .ts files. Now in this step, you have to rename the .js file to .ts file. Similarly, if the file uses JSX, you will need to rename it to .tsx. Now if you open that file in an editor that supports TypeScript, some of the codes might start giving compilation errors. So converting files one by one allows handling compilation errors more easily. So if TypeScript finds any compilation error during conversion, it still is able to translate the code. The next step is to check for errors. So after moving the JS file to TS file, immediately TypeScript will start type checking of our code. So you might get diagnostic errors in the JavaScript code. The final thing that you need to do is use the third-party JavaScript libraries. Now JavaScript projects use third-party libraries like jQuery or Lodash. Now in order to compile files, TypeScript needs to know the types of all objects in these libraries. The TypeScript type definition files for JavaScript libraries are already available at definitely typed. So there is no need to install this type externally. You need to install only those types which are used in our project. Now for jQuery, you can just install the definition, that is the npm install @types/jQuery. Now after all these steps, just make the changes to the JavaScript project, run the build tool, and now you should have the TypeScript project compiled into plain JavaScript that can be run in the browser. So these were the different steps involved in converting your existing JavaScript project to your TypeScript. And also with this, we have come to the end of this TypeScript tutorial. I hope you understood the different elements and fundamentals involved in TypeScript. So don't forget to let us know about your opinion in the comment section below. Till then, thank you and happy learning.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!